In the beginning, God created. We are created in God's image. We are endowed with the impulse and the ability to create. God pronounced the creation very good. Sometimes our ability to create gets ahead of our moral judgment. God invites us to join in the work of recreating. That's it. That's the sermon for today. This idea of God creating and we being created in God's image is the foundation of our identity. When we ask the existential questions, what is the meaning of life? Who am I? Who is God? We come back to this very beginning of our biblical narrative. In the beginning, God created, and He created us as humans in God's own image. Some of you have heard Dr. Peterson Veach speak on the Heston College theme verse in formation or at the new partner gathering yesterday. Now, we did not collaborate and we did not share notes ahead of time, but you're going to notice some complementary themes. There's no plagiarism here. Don't worry about that. But we do have some things that we were thinking of in the same direction. In the beginning, God took what was without form, void, dark, chaotic, and He created something beautiful, orderly, with infinite variety. When we just stop to experience the natural world long enough to really take it in, we are overwhelmed. We have no words. The images that we saw are all from Kansas. Kansas sunsets, Cheyenne Bottoms, Little Jerusalem, the full moon this last week, the Dick Arboretum, driving north along 177 through the Flint Hills, Coronado Heights, which never disappoints, the vast prairies traveling west. And this is only Kansas. We're only one of many states. East and west and north and south on this continent, there's amazing beauty, from the Redwood Forest to Arcadia National Park, from the Black Hills to the Everglades. And that is only one country on one of 7 continents, and there are 5 oceans, and this is only one small planet in one solar system in one galaxy. No wonder the psalmist exclaims that the heavens declare the glory of God. The earth shows God's handiwork. Day unto day pours forth speech. Night unto night gives knowledge. No speech or language where their voice is not heard. We are speechless. Words cannot come close to describing the impressions of our senses. We should note here that there are many creation or earth origin stories. Many ancient Egyptian myths, for example, often include sexual violence, murder, one god or group of gods in conflict with other gods. But in contrast, the Judeo-Christian narrative is one of beauty and light and growth. God is seen as creative love at the very beginning of time. And we, as humans, are created in God's image. We bear the image of the God who created what is so beautiful. We struggle to find words to describe it. Just think about that for a moment. We carry the image of God. Try to wrap your brain around that. And as the psalmist ponders that, he exclaims, "When I consider the heavens, the moon, and the stars, what are humans that you are mindful of them? Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. I cannot attain it." And look at all the beauty that we as humans can create. We too take raw materials and create beauty from them. Consider an artist, and we're all artists, creating a painting. We have natural surfaces such as wood or stone. We have human-made surfaces such as paper or canvas. And over centuries, we've developed tools like knives and brushes, themselves made of other raw materials. We paint with pigment, with wax, oil, water, and various combinations. The artist works from an image or a scene or a model with a medium on a surface over time to create a visual image that is like no other that has ever been created. On this campus, there are beautiful works of art. Just outside the Smith Center is a sculpture, Butterfly Dreams by John Mischler. Just inside, in the lobby, along the south wall, there's a ceramic mural created by Conrad Snyder. Along the opposite wall is the fiber art piece Pillar of Cloud, created by Shin-Hee Chin. On the east wall is a painting, A River Runs Through All Time by Philip Hirschberger. Immediately inside the Mary Miller Library itself is a wooden sculpture titled Refugees by Paul Friesen. Close by is a stone sculpture by Paul Soldner, which is the inaugural piece of the Paul Friesen collection. Go toward the stairwell and you see a quilt created by Helen Peachy. And this is just one part of one building. Yes, we are endowed with the impulse and the ability to create. Or consider the creativity necessary for the performing arts. We begin with a bare stage and a script, and we produce a drama with lighting, scenery, costumes, and most importantly with actors who bring characters to life. Or think of the complexity and creativity of producing, as we've often done in this very space, a musical performance such as The Messiah. Think of jazz, creating as we go, improvising. Creativity at every level, from the development of the instruments to the writing of the score, to the development of voices, to the pacing and the tone of the performance itself. Yes, we are endowed with the impulse and the ability to create. And then what we call the arts is only one way that this creativity shows itself. Look at this space, this very space that we're in. Look at the layout, the colors, the textures, the instruments. All created from natural or human-made materials, formed together to create a place of worship. So buildings, bridges, infrastructure, trucks, tractors, planes, rockets, toys, orbiting space stations, clothing, tools, all created from material that in turn was also created from raw materials. Yes, we do have the ability and the impulse to create, and it doesn't stop with things. Think of an occupation such as farming and the creativity used in planning crop rotations and raising livestock and marketing and financing and daily work, and the list goes on. Think of the creativity involved in arranging the human effort necessary to create a performance, or to coach a team, or to build a building, or any organization. That too is creating. Max Dupree wrote a book in the 1990s called Leadership Jazz, in which he makes the case that we are built to create, and leadership is an act of creation. 120 years ago, this college and this church did not exist. They began in the same year, 1909. Think of the creativity necessary to build the human structures necessary for these two institutions. Now, over 115 years later, artists and engineers and teachers and nurses and doctors and business people and leaders are all serving around the world. People have come here from every state and nearly every continent to create a rich and beautiful environment for learning. And people in this congregation have nurtured the creativity that is necessary for the birth of our organizations: Showalter Villa, Excel Industries, Heston Manufacturing, BMG, Heston Community Foundation, to name just a few. And some here will even recall that Heston Mennonite Church and the then Pennsylvania Church formed the Mennonite Disaster Service in 1950. That's now an international organization. Yes, we have the impulse and the ability to create. And because we are created in God's image, that impulse to create comes from deep within us. We create reflections of our souls. My mother, Ida Viola Mischler Keim, grew up near Kelowna, Iowa, and married my father from Pigeon, Michigan in 1941. They took up farming, renting land at two different farms before buying land near Bayport in 1953. It was hard work on a small farm that was wet, not tiled, with no financial help from parents, and the setback of a barn burning in 1956. They persevered. They raised 4 children, none of whom were easy. My mom passed away from a heart attack in 1975 at the age of 59. But she lived to see her children all followers of Jesus and the farm paid for. She was an artist in her homemaking and her gardening, with neighbors often slowing down when they drove past our place to look at her flower beds out close to the road. In her early 50s, she took up oil painting, mostly scenery pictures from calendar photos or snapshots from various places in Michigan. The painting seemed to be her comfort place, her delight. I remember seeing her there in the winters at her easel close to the east window, painting with this look of utter contentment. I think Mom was most at home with herself and closest to God when she was painting, when she was creating. To me, her pictures are beautiful. They came from deep within her, from her soul. The creating we do when we're doing what we love, whether it's making works of art or building buildings or teaching or healing or organizing people or running a business, this creating comes from our soul. It is beautiful, and it reflects the image of God. Creating is an act of faith. It's always experimental. We do not ever really know the end from the beginning. We have an idea, we have an image in our minds, a hoped-for outcome, and we begin. We begin with an action that sets other actions in motion. This is an act of faith. We pick up the brush or the instrument or the tool. We sing the first note. We write the first word. We order the material. We take out the loan. We make the phone call. It's all an act of faith. And the result is usually something a bit different than the beginning idea, because we learn as we go. As Paul Friesen often said, I listen to the wood or I listen to the stone, it lets me know how I can shape it. Creating is also an act of perseverance. We practice over and over. We try again. Artists have far more sketches on the floor than they do hanging in the exhibition. Entrepreneurs have more starts than successes. And once we know that the project has potential, we keep working and working, stroke by stroke, line by line, row by row, person by person. Creating is also an act of courage because we put ourselves out there. We take a risk. We wonder how people will respond. When something comes from deep within our soul that we've created and we put it out in the public eye, that's risky. That's risky. And sometimes people who have no idea of our process feel entitled to criticize our result. We also create in community, and community shapes us. In order for an artist to create, there must be a safe space for them in which to create, either the space that they create or that is provided for them. And that in our community provides that for us. And then we in turn, we shape the community that we live in. And there is no greater feeling than creating something that in our own eyes is beautiful. When that happens, it's like God comes from heaven and warms our souls. And then we realize that God has been in this with us all along the way. We are wired to create. It's who we are, and it's what we do. We're also aware that from the beginning of time, our creative potential sometimes run ahead of our ethics or our morality. Sometimes we create just because we can without giving much thought to what it might mean. So in the biblical narrative, we have examples like the Tower of Babel or the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, where he demanded that the people bow down to worship him. And now we have weapons that are designed to kill large numbers of people. We have pollution, we have dangerous drugs, we have terrorist organizations, we have polarized politics. We have people displaced by war and hunger that other people have caused. It seems we have pain and trauma all around. And it's here that recalling that we are created in God's image can be one of our greatest resources. It's in these times, in these places, that the creative impulse has the most potential for good. At the end of the first story of creation, God pronounced the creation very good. When we are in tune with the image of God within ourselves, that creativity is channeled to those things that are true and that are right and that are good, those things that are lovely, excellent, praiseworthy. We create things of beauty that will last. We create organizations that are resilient and recreate themselves. We create common ground rather than division. We create community. And so near the end of the biblical narrative, John writes that the one seated on the throne declares, "Behold, I make all things new." God's creation does not end with Genesis. God is continually recreating, drawing all toward beauty and truth. Heston College began as a college for Mennonite students west of the Mississippi. It's been transformed into a Mennonite college for the world. Programs have started and grown and ended. New programs and projects have taken their place. This congregation and our denomination has been recreated several times over and will be again. And so our impulse toward creating is also the recreating work of God. And in this regard, there is enormous potential. We now have medicines to improve life. We have knowledge and technology needed to produce the clean energy to power our factories and equipment and homes. Advances in agriculture are leading to increasing yields while lessening harmful impact on land and water. In communities all around the world, grassroots organizations dedicated to working across ideological divides and building relationships are springing up. And when we gather, we sing and we pray and we hold each other up. We create and recreate our community day after day. The impulse to create is part of who we are, and the act of creating is an act of faith. It is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. Our work of creating is ever new, and we perpetually seek to improve and begin again. Yes, in the beginning, God created. We are created in God's image. We are endowed with the impulse and the ability to create. God pronounced the creation very good. And God invites us to join in the work of creating.